today's talk is the Armenian Genocide Memorial Lecture. The fund that underwrites the lecture was established in 2005 by Christine Davidian. Christine is currently the co-president of the Alliance for the Study of the Holocaust and Genocide. Besides being very generous to the university in her philanthropy, she performs a lot of heavy lifting behind the scenes. I can say that most of this goes unnoticed, but it really does keep the lecture series humming. So for instance, she went to the hotel an hour ago to pick up our speaker today, and that's the sort of thing that makes my life easier. In 2005, Christine wanted to ensure that a lecture on the Armenian genocide was included each year in the lecture series. He solicited donations from Armenians of North Bay, a local heritage organization. The first significant funds came from the Thomas Family Foundation, which is a longtime Armenian American family here in Sonoma County. Significant donations also came from the sale of bricks commemorating the Armenian genocide in the Holocaust and Genocide Memorial Grove on the backside of campus. Over the years, more than 20 lectures on the Armenian genocide have been part of the series. Speakers have included Richard Hovhannissian, Stephen Asturian, Robert Krikorian, Sergio Laporta, and Ronald Suni. Several Armenian filmmakers have presented their documentaries here about the genocide, including Orphans of the Genocide, which was made for the 100th anniversary commemoration. We also hosted the Bay Area premiere of Women of 1915, as well as a screening of Crows of the Desert and the Stateless Diplomat, Diana Afshar's heroic life. The Armenian scholar Hazmik Harutunian presented her work on recovering lost Armenian lullabies and performed here with the Kitka Women's Vocal Ensemble. Christine has recently reconfigured her philanthropy by creating the Mary Dalbashi and Davidian Armenian Genocide Education Endowment, which will guarantee a steady stream of funds for Armenian programming in future years. And actually, next week's talk is underwritten by this new endowment. Okay, so our speaker today has been in the sights of the lecture series for a very long time. In fact, when we made our lecture, our schedule public, my predecessor, Diane Parnes, reached out to me and said, congrats on getting Akçam. Awesome. So because he taught at Clark University in Massachusetts, we feared that he would be too expensive to bring to campus. Fortunately, our colleagues at UCLA have turned Professor Akçam into a Californian. So I'm very pleased to introduce Taner Akçam to you. He is the inaugural director of the Armenian Genocide Research Program at UCLA. He has authored numerous books in English, Turkish, and German on the Armenian genocide. He is not only the first Turkish scholar to acknowledge the Armenian genocide, he is a scholar whose work is foundational to understanding the fate of Armenians in the Ottoman Empire and the early Turkish Republic. These accomplishments alone make him a compelling speaker. However, they are not fully indicative of Akçam's very rich life. Akçam is an embodiment of the idea that the search for historical truth is a deeply moral endeavor. While a university student in Ankara in the early 1970s, Akçam was arrested for participating in protests against the Turkish invasion of Cyprus. 2 years later, he was detained for editing a radical leftist journal that focused on the plight of ethnic Kurds in the Turkish Republic. Akçam was sentenced to 9 years in prison in 1977. He was identified by Amnesty International as a prisoner of conscience. After a year of imprisonment, he escaped from Ankara Central Prison by digging a hole under the prison wall. He was granted political asylum and eventually citizenship in West Germany, where he did his PhD work. I'm so pleased to welcome Akçam to the lecture series. We hope this will be the first of many appearances at our podium.
So, Stefan, thank you so much for this kind introduction, and it is really a great pleasure for me to be here with you and have the opportunity to speak about the fancy topic, modern grammar of denial. In this lecture, I will offer some theoretical reflection, because it's a class at the same time, some theoretical reflections on how the modern grammar of denial has been formed and how denialism should be understood. Drawing on these arguments, I will use the Armenian genocide as a central case to shed light on the nature of denial in general and on the Turkish denialism in particular. I think this is the slide. I have 5 arguments for you. And my analysis is structured around these 5 central arguments. And throughout the book, I will talk on each of these arguments more. Number 1, denialism is a modern phenomenon. It is the ontological counterpart of mass violence in the modern age. The second, truth and denialism are not opposites. Denialism produces its own facts and its own truth. Third argument is denialism is a structure and we fail to recognize as such. The failure, why we don't understand that the denialism is a structure, stems from what I call temporal and moral political compartmentalization. I'm going to talk about it. The separation of the past from present and of ethical judgment from political practice, which prevent us linking denial to existing political structures. And the thesis 4, nation-state formation entails denial. The construction of the founding narratives necessarily involves exclusion, silencing, and the distortion of the past. The 5th is actually a summary of all these 4, or the logical result of these 4 theses. It is not the denialism is intrinsic to genocide. It is not a post hoc reaction, but an integral component of the genocidal process itself, shaping both its executions and its aftermath, as exemplified in the Armenian genocide. So let's start with thesis 1. Denialism is a modern phenomenon. Attempts by states actors to hide mass killings and other atrocities are relatively modern phenomena. In earlier times, in ancient times, state violence, even on mass scale, was not viewed as normal, but often openly praised. Far from the concealing it, kings, sultans, and emperors commemorated such violence with pride in the monuments they erected and the inscriptions they left behind. They built awe-inspiring monuments to commemorate their victories over their enemies, which often involved the wholesale physical destruction of some enemies. I'll give you some examples here. Just the red line you can look. I mean, from the ancient kings, Assyrians, Persian kings, where they openly, proudly mentioned about their really massacres and killing. For example, the Assyrian king, I cut their throats like sheep, my prancing steeds, trained to harness, plunged into their welling blood as into a river, and so on. He continues, I filled the plain with corpses of their warriors like herbage, and so on. Another Assyrian king, I fed their corpse, cut into small pieces to dogs, pigs, vultures, the bird of the sky, and also fish of the ocean. And it continues. I mean, you can find so many really this kind of being proud, massacring 100,000 of individuals. Those attitudes change with the French Revolution. Or better to say, it started, of course, before French Revolution, the Enlightenment marked a decisive rupture in the moral grammar of power. Violence, once an accepted instrument of rule, was displaced from the realm of the normal to that of the exceptional. We think that violence is something exceptional. So it could still be employed, but only under the sign of necessity and with the burden of justification. Makes sense. From that moment onward, killing requires explanation. We have to explain, this is in modern age, why we resort to genocide, the mass atrocities, the violence generally. And when explanation failed, denial emerged as an inevitable companion. So makes total sense. Violence itself did not disappear. It changed its language. The modern state continued to wield it, but no longer with the triumphant candor of the ancients. Instead of being inscribed on the monuments, it was buried in the archives. You have to go and find out the truth there. In this transformed moral landscape, concealment replaced the commemoration. Denialism arose precisely at the point where violence could no longer present itself as legitimate power. Once violence became morally indefensible, denial became its structural component. It is ontological counterpart. If there is a violence, there is a denial along with it. In this sense, denialism constitutes the modern grammar of violence. This is my central argument. So this transformation also reshaped the practice of genocide. The problem of concealment is not an afterthought, but the part of the process from the outset. The Armenian genocide illustrates this clearly. The Ottoman authorities sought to frame the entire mass violence not as an extermination, but as a lawful and necessary response to an existential threat. The deportation process, the entire Armenian deportation and extermination process was structured as legally sanctioned relocation. There is a law for it, and it is the Ottoman version of this law. It was issued May 27th, 1915, and published in the official gazette June 1st, 1915. Significantly, the term Armenian does not even appear in the text. It is during the war year, it is the discretion of Ottoman army commander to relocate population from the war zone to secure places. This is the law. This is the law based on Ottoman authorities removed around 1.5 million Armenians. Therefore, denialism did not follow the events. It was built into their execution from the very beginning. And here, in order to give an understanding this structure, institutional structure was built on it. Such concealment of this big act demanded a large scale of operation and close coordination between different ministries. The Interior, War Ministry, and Foreign Ministries worked in close cooperation, combining surveillance, intelligence, and propaganda. And in each ministry, there were special departments in charge of this process. So it's not only verbal claim and so on. It was a structure. I will come back to that more. For example, in the Interior Ministry, a special bureau monitored Armenian activities İstihlaat Müdüriyeti, even established 1913. The task was to monitor the Armenian activities, not only within the Ottoman Empire, but throughout the world. And throughout the world, so they had to cooperate with the foreign ministry. And then they established a special department, foreign ministry, to cooperate. And it was a war years. There were in war ministry 2 different institutions, and this interior ministry and foreign ministry had to cooperate with the war ministry. And it was not a coincidence. The book publication in French, English, and so on started with the beginning of 1916. I forgot to put the images of these French and English books to show you how really denialism was already structured and organized throughout these killing operations. Cases 2. So this was my first statement. The truth and denialism are not opposites. Denialism produces its own facts and own truths. Denialism is often misunderstood as merely rejecting an established fact. I assume that 99% of you think the same way. There are facts, opinions, and interpretations, and the truth based on facts, so it's undeniable. Denial is an act to deny the truth. This is how you think. Unfortunately, you are wrong. This is not how denialism works. It is complicated. Have you seen this movie? It says always, it is complicated. It is complicated. And this is also really very complicated. This assumption rests on the belief that facts, opinion, and interpretation are clearly separable from each other, and the truth that emerges from consensus over objective, undeniable facts. Denialism does not operate in this way. It functions in the blurred space between fact and truth, constructing its own facts, with them its own version of reality. So I used Hannah Arendt for this. The Truth and Politics. I strongly recommend to the students to read this piece. It is amazing piece, explains everything about how we should understand the truth. To grasp this dynamic, Hannah Arendt's distinction between rational truth and factual truth is important. So there is no one truth. There are different kind of truths actually we are talking about. And for example, truths in mathematics, truth in science, truth in philosophy, and historical truth, what we call factual truth. So we have at least 4 different categories of truth to learn. And rational truth can be rediscovered. Platon's philosophy, if Platon had not been there, there would have been another philosopher to discover this. It is the same with science. Once it has been forgotten, there is a possibility somebody else can rediscover it. What about factual truth? Factual truth depends on concrete evidence, documents, testimonies, and material traces, and it's therefore inherently fragile. If truth, factual truth, is not recorded, then there is no truth. If you destroy all these testimonies, official documents, and other traces of the truth, then there is no truth. You just replaced with other documents, and you have your own factual truth. So this is the way denialism works. Records can be destroyed, altered, or replaced. Witnesses silenced, discredited, or countered with fabricated accounts. Once the evidentiary basis of the facts undermined, no purely rational effort can restore them. What is not preserved in recorded or memory effectively disappears from the realm of the factual. Denialism does not simply negate reality, but it reconstructs it and producing an alternative archive and finally an alternative truth. I will give you some examples. So first thing, I will go back to that topic, but just for the sake of understanding destroying of documents. Coincidentally, we don't know why there remained at least 3-4 archival documents in the archive. And these are some telegrams. I put the Ottoman originals also, some of them, or one of them. And these are the Talat. He was the interior minister of the time and was coordinating entire deportation. And he openly orders, says, for example, 22 June 1915, inform those who will be executing the orders of our communication, take the copy of this cable from the telegram office and destroy it. Three. I have another one. I might not show it. I cannot remember what's on my slide, but there is a fourth one. I discovered at least 4 documents within which it is ordered the telegram should be taken from the telegram office and whoever reads should destroy this evidence. So this is how it works. So my other argument, denialism is a structure. Denialism is often understood as a correctable moral failure. I think most of us also think that way. There is a historic event, it's bad enough, and we appeal to the morals of the individual. Please accept these wrongdoings. This is the way how it works. We think denialism is a kind of ethical mistake directed at past or present crime. That can be Gaza, that can be Armenian genocide, anything else. It's a kind of ethical mistake, and in principle, it can be rectified. You call the governments and so on in that. Yet, denialism is not simply an error of judgment or acknowledgement. It is a structure that spans both historical experience and contemporary political reality. In this sense, it is comparable, denialism is comparable to apartheid regime. This is my other bold argument or thesis for it. Not merely a moral attitude, but an institutionalized system. It's a system that shapes norms, regulates visibility, and organizes political praxis. It is important. Why it happens in this way? Because we understand that the denialism cannot be reduced to a matter of morality alone. Our failure to grasp its structural nature stemmed from what I call, this is another very fancy argument of mine, temporal and moral political compartmentalizations. So the temporal compartmentalization is separation of the past from present. So Armenian genocide, it's an happened 100 years ago, forget it, who cares, and move on. So it's a moral attitude to an event in the past because of this temporal compartmentalization. And the other ethical judgment from political practice. Today, we think there are realpolitik that the states follows and moral judgments that we have. And we think that these are not much to do. And we must say, real political interest of the United States does not include any moral whatever related to the events in the area. So this separation, past and present, and ethical judgment from political practice, these compartmentalizations generally generate a dual incapacity. So generation of a dual incapacity, the inability to connect past violence to present political structure, and the inability to think morality and politics together. Both stem from the refusal to recognize denialism as a structural mechanism linking past violence to present institutions. So what we do, we separate past from the present morality and the morality today from the politique. And historical atrocities mostly turned into closed episodes. It's done, it was in the past. Detached from contemporary realities, moral sites to be visited like museums and churches, where one reflects, even mourns on the past atrocities, rather than confronting them as an ongoing political condition shaping institutions and power relations. And I'll give you an example from Ottoman-Turkish case. In the past, Armenian demands for reforms and equality, this was only thing that they asked. Social reform, this was mainly the land reform, and secondly, political equality, citizenship. They want to be equal citizens. But these demands were securitized by the Ottoman authorities and framed as an existential threat, producing a political order that excluded Armenians and created the structural conditions of genocide. Their security logic persisted still today, and the securitization of the social and political demands of non-Turkish group remains the institutional foundation of denialism today and continues to shape the domestic and regional policy of Turkey. So you cannot distinguish Turkish denialism of Armenian genocide from Kurdish policy of Turkish government. Very simple. Look at the National Security Council. This is the highest constitutional institution in Turkey. It's in constitution, Turkish constitution. And this National Security Council determines the policy of Turkey towards Syria, towards Armenia, the regional policies towards Europe. And they also have a branch within it they called Fight Against Alleged Genocide Claims. Same institution, develop policies for today, and at the same time, they develop the denial campaign. You see really how they go intertwined. So the denialism manifests through discriminatory policies targeting minorities such as Christians, Jews, Kurds, and Alevites. It's a religious sect in Turkey. And internationally, the same logic informs Turkey's regional posture in hostility towards Armenia, its alignment with Azerbaijan, and its policies towards Syrian Kurds. You can only understand if you grasp denialism as a structure that continues from the past today. And at the second level that I mentioned, the compartmentalization operates through the separation of morality from politics. Denialism is treated as an ethical issue and detached from strategic consideration. I don't need to talk about all these. The Armenian friends know this very good. If they go to the American politicians, they would usually say over the decades, yeah, of course, bad things happen to Armenians, but you know, we have our national interest in the Middle East. We cannot really destroy our real political interest because of some moral issues. We are sorry. So then this separation helped to reproducing same policies that creates mass policy. So another thesis, 4, the formation of the nation state and the narrative constructed afterwards about that founding necessarily in exclusion, silencing, and denial. So building on Hannah Arendt's thesis on the fragility of factual truth and drawing also on Michel Rolfe-Trou. You see his name on the, he was a Chicago historian past 2012, I think. And Ernest Renan, the famous French historian. I suggest that denialism is structurally embedded in the formation of nations. More specifically, nation states construct their founding narratives through the process that necessarily involve exclusion, silencing, and denial. There is a famous saying of Ernest Renan that you may have heard about it. He expressed this in one of his books. He says, a nation could only be formed by the distortion of its past. If a nation cannot distort its past, it cannot establish itself. National historiography is actually distortion of the history, nothing else. And he added, the most common form of such distortion is forgetting, pushing the society to forget, and silencing is a part of really this project. And according to Michel Trullo, he developed 4 moments how really silencing and denial be created. The first moment is the creation of the facts. So you first create your own facts, even when the events are unfolding, and transform into traces such as documents, testimonies, and artifacts. Here, power already shapes what is recorded. The second moment is making archives. Put all these documents that you produced, and where traces are selected, classified, and preserved, determining what will count as available document and knowledge. The third moment is construction of narration. So it's time to tell the story because you have enough archival materials. And this is a specific interpretation of your own past. And the fourth moment is institutionalized of memory, through which particular narratives acquire authority as official history. This is the national history of every nation state at the end. I add to that a fifth moment, and I'll give you some examples of it, the moment of destroying and or proving the falsity of critical documents, because it is not always possible to destroy entire materials. So you have to find a way to deal with this also. And now I will show you. Finally, I'll come to Armenian genocide more closely and give you the examples how this theoretical model shapes the Ottoman Turkish historiography. These 5 moments that I mentioned are not abstract, and in the Ottoman case, they can be observed as 3 concrete operations. Operation number 1, create and assemble your own facts and archive. I will show you examples. Second, hiding or destroying the main bulk of documentary evidence that clearly show the genocidal intent of Ottoman authorities. This has happened during the genocide and after the genocide. And after the genocide, I made a list. I can explain you later more. For example, Teşkilat-ı Mahsusa, special organization who was in charge of exterminating Armenian deportees. You can hardly try to find materials related to that institution. It's not there. Or CUP, the party that organized the Armenian Genocide, Committee of Union and Progress, Central Committee files. It's gone. You cannot find. Or some files from Interior Ministry and the Military Tribunal, Istanbul, what it is, I will tell you more. So, hiding and destroying main bulk of documentary evidence, and then deny the authenticity of some available original documents, because some still can come up, and you have to, that shows the original character of the genocidal policies, so which is called in our field Naim Andonion documents. I'll give you a couple of examples to that. Couple of examples. First operation, the moment of fact and archive creation. You all know, and the reason why I am invited here is the April 24. It's the official day of Armenian commemoration. And at that day in Istanbul, approximately 180, then the number went up in the following weeks and months. 180 Armenians were arrested, Armenian intellectuals. And they were then sent to Central Anatolia from Istanbul. They were put in two different jails in Çankırı and Ayaş. And then over the period of 1915 summer, they were taken in group from this prison and they were killed on their way to along the Anatolia to Diyarbakır. Officially, they were sent to a court case to Diyarbakır. And they were killed, all these intellectuals. Only a couple of them survived. This is what you believe. This is what I believe. The document says just the opposite. For example, individuals, names Malomyan Agoni, this is actually Agnuni. Those Armenians might know the name. He is the founder of one of the important members of Dashnakstyun, and the others. The document says, yeah, we took them to the Diyarbakır, but on the way they escaped. Bravo. So, and this is the official document in a very early period. And you know, these are serious issues. It's not only one document. There are dozens of documents related to individuals. And Yusuf Sarınay, who was the president of Turkish Historical Society, he wrote really an excellent academic article published based on only archival materials. And he proved, based on Ottoman archival materials, that none of the April 24 detainees were murdered. They were only imprisoned, released, pardoned, or deported. Ottoman archival records extensively, full of documents, says, for example, security of convoys ensured. Provision and health care delivered. Settlements, special settlement places were organized for Armenians. Result, they wrote in their books also a very successful relocation operation. Everything on archival materials. An important thing is that they were not produced later, not after the genocide, not 1920s, 30s. They were produced during when the events were unfolding. This makes the issue more trickier. So this is the important example that we should know. As I said, the second important operation, the moment of hiding and destroying the critical documents. So you create your own archive and you have to destroy, of course, critical documents too. This is another document. I put it because this is not from Talat Pasha. This comes from the local governor to Istanbul. This is one of the reasons that it's coded very well. This is another topic. I might come to that. But it says also the destruction of this telegram is the request of the Central Committee. So this is the Ottoman part. It says from Erzurum, they sent to the Istanbul. There is a central committee in Erzurum, organizes the killing operation, and it gives, this is the document that, coincidentally, we got this document. It says the killing operation started 1st December 1914. Everybody thinks that, oh, Armenian genocide started April 24, March or late March or April, then the killing started. No. In that document, coincidentally, I can tell you why they kept these archival materials in the archive. It says killing started Armenians in Bitlis one area, April 1st, 1914. They say extermination of Armenian men and those who could be a threat to Ottoman government should be arrested and taken to the city of Bitlis and be exterminated. 1st December 1914. So there was a court trial in Istanbul between 1919 and 1922. Ottomans lost the war, and Union and Progress Party, CUP, that organized the genocide, they had to leave the country, and new government, in order to get a better peace conditions, they set up a tribunal in Istanbul, first an interrogation committee, and then the court cases, and there were altogether 62 courts in Istanbul. And in that, throughout this process, in these court trials, defendants themselves testified that archives had been reviewed, the Ottoman archives, and sensitive materials deliberately destroyed. And as I mentioned to you, the names, the special organization files, CUP and Central Committee papers, Interior Ministry documents were eliminated. Where we know these? From the trials in Istanbul, defendant said that. But later this tribunal's record is also destroyed. They are not available. You cannot find them. How we know this information? Because the newspapers of the time reported about these things. And I will show you how it really works, this system. And it was, as I said, disappeared later. This is the famous or infamous sentence, show us the original. Okay? What you see here is the main indictment of this tribunal in Istanbul. It is published in official gazette, government organ, and it is 1919 May, it was published. It is the indictment of the government, and public prosecutor had two incriminating of telegram in that document, in that indictment. One is from a guy, Bahattin Shakir, member of CUP Central Committee, and the other is Mahmud Kamil Pasha, Third Army Commander. And the first, it says, are the Armenians being dispatched from there being liquidated? Are these troublesome people you say you have expelled and dispersed being exterminated or just deported? Bahattin Shakir, as a CUP Central Committee member, coordinating the killing operation, and he wanted to know whether the Armenians in a certain area, Harpert, whether the Armenians from there have been exterminated or sent further somewhere else to be exterminated, so that he can keep the records. And the second is a very famous telegram of Mahmud Kamil Pasha, Third Army Commander. He says, those who have been hiding and maintaining Armenians in opposition to government orders be hanged in front of their properties and their properties burned to the ground. Now, what happened was the following. In the early months of the weeks of the deportations, Muslim individuals or families of the area, they started hiding Armenian friends, their families. And it was really, it jeopardized the entire deportation operation. And then Third Army Commander was in charge of this area and said, those Muslims who saved Armenians in their house against the government order will be hanged in front of their houses and their house be burned. Aha. Then this is the telegrams. So I took out one important issue. Here is the story. The denialism said, show us the original. How do we know that it's an original document? There's a public prosecutor, biased. He made up these. And there were enough American historians, true academician and historian. As a historian, you cannot really satisfy only with a couple sentences in the indictment. You want to see the original. If you cannot see the original, you say, This is not authentic. We cannot accept these as a fact. What happens? He wrote a book, Günter Levy. And then he was invited to Ankara. He received a medal from Turkish government. So this is how the scholarly world also works. Coincidentally, I found the document. Maybe in the question and answer period, I can explain you how I get hold on that document. It is sealed by Ottoman government, authentic Ottoman document. There is no doubt it is authentic. And it was the same with the Bahattin Shakir telegram. So it popped up. It's a long story, but even you can then show that it is an official Ottoman document and shows clearly that the public prosecutor didn't make up anything. He was just quoting from this document. What happened later, Turkish authorities either hide or destroyed. We don't know. This is coincidentally, I got hold on these original documents. This is a topic of movie, actually. But so now the third operation, and I'm going to end my talk with this third operation. Aram Andonian, it's an Armenian intellectual, arrested April 24, 1914, and he get to know an Ottoman bureaucrat with the name Naim Efendi, working in the deportation office in Aleppo. Naim Efendi needed money. He gave around 52 documents to Aram Andonian. Aram Andonian published these documents in French and in Armenian language. 1921, the book was Met Vojire, The Great Crime. In 1983, Turkish Historical Society published a claim that the memoir and records that Andonian has published were all fakes. I can proudly let you know that I was able finally to get Aram Andonian's book published in English language. It is a really big question why this book hasn't been published over 100 years. Now it is available. You can buy and read this story also easily. This document, this book, Aram Andonian's book, really included incriminatory evidences. For example, an Ottoman telegram you see he published in his book, and it says, for example, the Central Committee had decided to completely annihilate all Armenians. These kind of telegrams was published in that. Another one, even destroy the children. This is another order, and you see there the original of document published by Andonian. And in this book, Turkish authorities claimed that, number one, an Ottoman bureaucrat by the name Naim Efendi did not exist. Armenians made it up. Secondly, then they say it makes total sense. You can't have a memoir for someone who didn't exist. If you claim that Naim had a memoir or wrote something, show us. Indeed, nobody could show this also. And then the telegrams that I showed you, these telegrams, they claimed they are all forgeries on 12 ground. Strong claims, and because of this reason, until 2015, until I discovered this archive, what I called Krikor Gergeryan archive, this is an Armenian priest. There is a long story along his archive, but at the end, I was able to show that Naim Efendi exists. This is his signature, and I'm not saying this. It is the Turkish military archive published some documents, and they never thought that there will be some idiot historians, crazy historian, going page by page of all these. I mean, 8 volume, each of them 800 pages. You need time to go through all of these. And then in one of these cases, Naim Efendi's testimony in that book, volume 8. So this is, we found that this guy exists. And I also went into archive and show you the important document. In Turkish archive today, if you go there, you will find this kind of coded telegrams. They started putting these Ottoman archive after 2012. And as you see, this is a 4-digit code, 4944 or similar. Each word's coded, and then the official in Istanbul, they really decoded. This is how we read. I went through in the archive and I found out that today in Ottoman archive, there exist thousands of documents with the same coding system. So they cannot really claim that these documents were forgeries, because exactly the same coding system that we have in Ottoman archive. And because of this, then I published the book Killing Order, and during that time, New York Times wrote an article, special article about this finding, and they called me Sherlock Holmes of Armenian genocide. So, by denying, this is my last slide, by denying what happened in 1915, Turkey reproduces the institution, social relations, and mindset that created the events of 1915 in the first place. Denial is not simply a defense of an old regime, Ottoman Empire. Denial also fuels the politics of the continuing aggression both inside and outside Turkey today. Recognition of the Armenian genocide is not a thing of the past that can be forgotten when confronted with the seemingly more pressing issues of today. On the contrary, it is the key to solving contemporary security problems in Turkey. For that reason, struggle against genocide denialism in Turkey is not only struggle for justice for the Armenian people, but also a central component of the political struggle for greater democracy and peaceful coexistence in the region. Thank you so much for listening.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and my question was about the documents that you said that they had that were saying they weren't murdered and they were provided with healthcare and stuff like that. So not only were they ordered to destroy certain telegrams, but while they're destroying those, they're making these fictitious telegrams saying that everything is okay.
Yes, and the issue is a little bit complicated. Actually, one student should work about the language of these documents, how they really justified within the same document the entire procedure. For example, it says, we heard that certain atrocities happening against the Armenians. Please be aware that our aim is to reduce the level of threat for our government. We are not intending to exterminate. And then continues this, please give the healthcare and the others, and so this is a standard sentence added at the end. So it is a very interesting language still going on. There were those killing orders, they were all gone, and all other documents, they were kept in the archive. Just another example, what they keep. And they show these documents as the goodwill of Ottoman Armenians. They say, during the deportation, a lot of orphans, unexpected, it was not the government policy and to exterminate their parents, but Armenians orphans were there. So please give us the number of these Armenian orphans in your city and distribute them among Muslim families and marry them with Turkish men and make them Muslims. And they say, this is their denialist argumentation, you see, we kept the children and we saved them. But if you read the 1948 Genocide Convention, it says forcibly conversion and assimilation is a sign of genocidal policies. So every document should be read with a critical eye. This is the important part.
So I know a big problem right now is with people denying like evidence of genocide, like what's happening in Gaza. And is that could that be a part of denialism? Is like the common people's like
Part of what?
denialism?
Yeah.
Could that be a part of it? Like people's denial on they see evidence or video of genocide, but they still deny it or say it's AI or stuff like that. Is that a part? Could that be a part of denialism?
Of course. I mean, the main argument is always, if you look the Armenian case closely and look what's going on in Gaza, for example, the main argument you will hear, and I exclude all those documents related to Armenian genocide, it says they make a distinction between those who has arm in their hand, combatant and non-combatant is the main distinction that they make. And their argument is we are suppressing an uprising against government. This is national security, and it is a right of every nation state to suppress an uprising. There are some civilian casualties. These are unexpected result. This one really not organized consciously, but unexpected result of this policy. This is the main model that they use. And in Ottoman case also, they said, we only attacked those who were fighting against us. So they say Armenian uprising in Marash, in Van, in Shebin-Karahisar, in Hatay, and so on and so forth. So it is the legitimate right of every state to suppress those who organize an uprising against the state. This is the main argument.
So I want to pretend I'm a student and ask a question. And you can tell me whether your model of denialism accommodates this form of denialism. So for a long time in the field of Holocaust history, the principal denier was a professor of engineering at Northwestern University. And he denied that he was motivated by prejudice. He said, I am not an anti-Semite. I am not a Nazi. However, I do not believe that Auschwitz could be responsible for the death of 2 million people. And so he was very kind of craftily shedding doubt or casting doubt on a small bit of Holocaust truth in order to cast doubt on kind of the wider event. And it strikes me that that form of denialism has become really central to modern politics. Like it's been used to cast doubt on global warming, right? Because there are, of course, scientists who disagree with the consensus, although they're in a very small minority. So does your model accommodate that form?
Yes, I took this part out of my talk because I wanted to concentrate on this structural aspect of denialism. I call it rhetorical argumentations in our field. In almost every genocide, you have number are exaggerated. You cannot prove the intent. It is only relocation or fighting of terrorism, and mainly national security concerns. And in Armenian case, they have the argument weather and the health, the diseases. It was not only the Armenians, I mean, because an important number of Armenians are perished because of the diseases. And they rightly say it was not only the Armenians, Muslims perish also. So this kind of rhetorical argumentation you can find almost in every genocide. And it starts with the number.
Hello, I am Aiden. I think this question might be in the same vein as what was just asked, but what were some of the 12 grounds by which all of these documents produced by, I think, a Ramadanian?
Yeah.
There were 12 grounds by which they were somehow forgeries. Could any of those, would you be willing to share any of those, and are any of those illuminating of more modern circumstances?
It is a complicated process. You can read in the introduction that I wrote, but I give you only one, very striking. Until 2012, there were no coded telegrams in Ottoman archive. This is the issue that you have to keep in mind. So let me go back and show you this, for example. This kind of coded telegrams you could not find in Ottoman archive. So this is, for example, from Ottoman archive. As you see, it is coded with Arabic numbers. After 2012, they put this. One of the arguments that they used is, as you see here, it is 3-digit, the numbers. So the coding system based on 3-digit numbers. And they wrote in 1983 in that book saying that there is no one single document with 3-digit. Antonian and Armenians in Aleppo made this up. And after 2012, they forgot this debate around 1980s, and they put all kind of documents with 3-digit. This is the central argument. Another one, they made the argument that Ottoman authorities changed the coding system every 6 months. It's a complicated, because there was a cipher office in Istanbul. Dozens of bureaucrats, and their job was creating ciphers. There were no emails. I mean, they were creating ciphers. And if a governor, for example, travels to Europe, they create a special cipher system for him. And then those, for example, special communication with governors, it has a special coding system. Or army commanders, they have special coding system. Or let's say the settlement office, they had the 2-digit coding system. And never Interior Ministry or the military used 2-digit. They used 4 or 5-digit coding system. And they said, oh, you know, Ottoman authorities, they claimed, during the 6 months, they used only one coding system, 4-digit, nothing else. And the next 3 months, they used 5-digit coding system, nothing else. They were lying to the teeth. Because I discovered, I counted in my book, Killing Orders, hundreds of documents at the same time, 4-digit, 5-digit, 3-digit, 2-digit. They exist in Ottoman archive today. So this kind of 12 different arguments they developed.
Hi, my name is Max Martin, and you spoke a bit about temporal compartmentalization and about how denialism is a sort of maintenance and continuity of the past. And I was wondering, what do you believe is the lifespan of denialism?
Great question. as long as the ruling elite stays as the same group. If you take the courses on conflict resolution or transitional justice, in those classes you will learn that the societies can face with their past if only there is a change in the ruling elite. Germans use the term Entnazifizierung, so making Nazi-free the society. So if the ruling elite continues over the decades, and if the regime character stays as it is, then there won't be any change. My deceased professor, Vahakın Dadrian, used to make joke every time. He says, imagine Nazis remained on the power after 1945, and they established the new German Republic. And if you claim the killing of Jews, what would they say? What? Genocide? What genocide would a Nazi say? I mean, deny this, because regime hasn't changed. So one thing is regime must change. Those who knows Turkey a little bit, the Armenian genocide was not a topic of public debate. It was suppressed until early 2000s. Only to your surprise, only the religious party, AKP, came to power because they were not part of the ruling elite that established republic and established denialist policies. After 2002, there were an opening in the Turkish denial policies until it continued until 2000, really 12, 13, 14. We can trace back all these development after Tayyip Erdogan, the president now, made an alliance again with the old guards of the republic. He again became an arch denialist. But throughout this period, one thing changed. It's very interesting. Today, Turkish denialism is a little bit different than the previous denialism. It changes the language. It's another topic. Every April 24, the president of Turkey write a letter to Armenian patriarch and express its sorry for the Armenian losses. So it's interesting. And at the same time, of course, they say Muslims can never commit a genocide. It is only the Westerners or the Christians, they can do such a thing.
Hi, I'm Paul. Given a successful case of denial, can you hear me? Given a successful case of denialism where the general society believes in what the government says and what the government says has been made truth, people who go against that general knowledge and claim the government has done immense wrong, we would call them conspiracy theorists.
Sincere?
Conspiracy theorists.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What is your experience with going against what the government has said and the general knowledge of the Armenian genocide?
Of course, over the years, certain things has changed. There is another point that I excluded in my talk. Fight of denialism has nothing to do with academia. You cannot defeat denialism with academic accomplishment. You know, denialism is like taking a rabbit out of hat. Every time when you defeat them, they find another rabbit. They took another rabbit out of the hat. So it never ends because denialists are not denying because of the lack of evidence. You cannot say Netanyahu doesn't know what's going on in Gaza, or Turkish rulers, they never knew. Talat Pasha, who organized the denialism, he already in 1916 gave a huge talk blaming Armenians, saying that this is their fault. They attacked the state and we responded. So it is a political fight. only through political fight you can defeat denialism. Of course, scholarly work important. You have to be honest, you have to work academically and try to refute their arguments, but you should know that there is no distinction between academia and politics. You don't have this luxury. You are part of political fight. This is the reason they attacked me, not only me, the friends like myself, the critical intellectuals in Turkey. They assassinated Hrant Dink, an Armenian journalist, 2007 January in Istanbul. And only through a political fight for the truth and recognition of genocide, if you can be able to mobilize, if you can consider this a part of your fight for democracy. This is what's going on in the United States today also, nothing else. I mean, you have to fight for democratic right, and an important part of this democratic right is being able to tell the truth. And there is an infamous article in Turkey, 301. I was put on trial because of that article, for example. And now here in the United States, they started in Great Britain. You cannot talk today about Gaza genocide. You will be really put on trial. So democracy and talking about the truth are really intertwined, and you cannot separate both from each other. So unfortunately, those who would love to be the Eiffel term and be a poor academic like myself, we don't have this luxury. Either we have to take this challenge and make us a part of democratization movement of our country, or we should give up. And this is the reality that we are facing. HD.
Hi, I'm Maeve. I'm not gonna lie. You answered my question that I was gonna ask in just the last bit that you were saying, because I was gonna ask about what steps that the everyday person can do to combat denialist structures. But I'd like to shift my question. As somebody who has worked in the field of seeking truth for so long, and as someone who is an intellectual and also an advocate for those who have suffered great atrocity, what are some tips for those of us who are wanting to get into this field to maintain our own physical and mental health as we continue to do the work?
It's another wonderful question and long topic, but instead answering your question, I would like to suggest to read again my beloved political philosopher Hannah Arendt, and in one of her essays, Past and Present, or you can search actually term courage. Courage mostly considered something as an individual heroism, or having courage to take some risk. Hannah Arendt approaches to the question of a courage from a total different perspective. She says it is the faculty of judgment. So it is one of the ways for us to develop the judgment that is the correct one, and then the question for students, others, whether we want to be part of this faculty. And for Hannah Arendt, it is important because it is part of being human. So not telling the truth is a kind of giving up a piece of your humanity. And she uses the term, another term you may look in Hannah Arendt is the natality. Philosophers mostly discuss the question of death. But Arendt says, no, natality, the birth. Because birth is the plurality. Every individual comes to the world is something different than any others. So this means having these different opinions, having different judgments is a part of our human being. So we have to take this seriously. That's my answer.
I don't want to make light of what you've been talking about, which is amazing, but being Sherlock Holmes, how did you get into the archives and did you send Watson?
Did you think you were a spy?
You know, we have our prejudices. Every individual, even those who claims that they are so liberal and so open to everything, even myself, we have prejudices. There is no human being free of prejudices. A general prejudice is, oh, the Ottoman archives are worthless. They destroyed everything. You cannot find anything there. And now I tell you against these prejudices. Ottoman archive, one of the best archive in the world because of its cataloging system. Is there anybody here? He worked, of course, in all these archives. If you go to German archive or British archive, mostly we work with the Foreign Office documents. And you have to look at a certain period. And they bring you an 800 pages material for only, let's say, 2 months. And imagine you are looking for a 5-year period, and you have to go through each of these pages. Ottoman archive, on the contrary, cataloged itself based on single documents. You have the summary of each document in modern Turkish. And now in the artificial intelligence age, you can get them easily translated. And more than that, you can buy them here, sitting in this classroom. You can buy any documents you want from Ottoman archive. It is, maybe I should calculate it, so cheap. And the documents that you show, that I showed to you, it doesn't matter. So
Okay.
it's okay. I mean, this document. It will be in my forthcoming book in January 2027. There will be a book on Armenian genocide, and this is one of the images that will be in the book because of the 1st December 1914, the killing order. And the Princeton University Press emailed me yesterday on my way here saying that the resolution is not good. Send us another one. I said, no problem. They thought, oh, if you can send us within 1 week or 1 month and so on. I said, no problem. From Ottoman archive, I downloaded and sent them a resolution. So this is the Ottoman archive, and we should really learn to use this archive. I can go to Turkey without any problem. I tell you another anecdote. It's also important. I was, of course, attacked, dragged from courtroom to courtroom, but over the years, there is one thing important. I told about the judgment. They couldn't find anything that I really violate academic honesty. So I met a foreign office diplomat, retired, who is in charge of certain denialist policies, very polite conversation. And he admitted to me in person saying that we take you very seriously, Mr. Akçam. So whatever you like, we follow you. So over the years, if you don't lie, I mean, we have only 0% really, we should never really make a mistake. A denialist historian can really change everything, but we don't have this luxury. And over the years now, especially after Hrant Dink's assassination, the attitude in Turkish society has changed. Even though denialism is still dominant discourse, but now there is an acceptance that we also exist, critical scholars, and they have to learn to live with us. So when I go to archive, mostly because I'm a well-known individual, the director of archive invites me in his room and we have tea and nice civil conversation.
So we do have a question online. This is from Aria Balador. She writes, esteemed Holocaust historian Raul Hilberg in an interview expressed his disagreement with political bans on denialism, as that would be a sign of weakness that could lead to increased denialism. What do you make of bans on denialism?
Oh, as somebody coming from Turkey, I hate dealing with denialism with law.
Yeah.
Law is not the way to fight denialism because we have a law in Turkey that denies talking on the truth. How can I say, oh, don't put me in jail because I'm saying genocide, but those who denies the genocide.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Hrant Dink once said, because there was a law, I don't know what happened with it in France. It bans the denialism. There was a court case against Bernard Lewis and so on and so forth. Hrant used to say, I am going to France and fighting for the freedom of speech and having the right to deny. I will come to Turkey and defend the right of against denialism. So there should not be restriction in law. So this is my basic idea.
Hi, I'm Harry W. Do you see any changes in Turkey in these regards with regard to denialism, with regard to their attitude towards Armenians in Armenia? Is there any evolution in the past decade or two that's been occurring? It's the same regime, same people that have been there, so that's your point, that it doesn't change until the people change. But is there anything with the new generation, any sense that it's time to move past or try to live with Armenia next door as a neighbor? Anything happening that indicates a positive change? And if so, where do you think that's going?
I'm in the sphere of pessimists. I don't think we are coming to the question of realpolitik today in the Middle East. There is no direct objective for Turkey to acknowledge the Armenian genocide. Nobody has any leverage against Turkey to change that policy. And in the current political atmosphere in the Middle East, Turkey is one of the biggest powers. And most importantly, the role of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan today keeps the, how do you call it, the faucet for the oil. They can close anytime they want, and Turkey is very much depending on Azeri natural gas and oil, and they determine the development of the course in the regional policies. This is the dilemma that the Armenian government has today. I don't think there will be any change in government policies, but I see a strong correlation between democratization of country and talking about Armenian genocide. I assume the perspective is developed towards what is going on related to Native Americans in the United States. It is not in the realm of government policy, recognizing or non-recognizing. It is mostly an issue on the civil society level, in universities, in every places, people start talking and so on and so forth, and in academia. And I mean, if there hadn't been this failed coup d'etat in 2016, that having conferences, lectures on Armenian genocide in Turkey was business as usual. So it already had a space within universities, and in 2016, winter came back again. So with the democratization, I assume there will be an opening in the civil society sphere where universities can organize, discuss these events, but this is it. On government policy, I'm very pessimist. I don't think that there will be any change at all.